Welcome to the Senior Moment podcast, where we dive into topics that deal with seniors and senior living. If you are a senior, work with a senior, or have a senior in your life, this is the podcast for you. You never know what topics will be discussed in each and every episode. Hosted by Cindy Cannon and Brady Tabbs. This is the Senior Moment podcast. Welcome to the Senior Moment podcast. We're excited to have Shea Gaertner here with us from CSG Tax and Accounting. Shea, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, as you mentioned, I am the founding member of CSG Tax and Accounting. I am a certified public accountant and a certified fraud examiner. And in my business, I focus mainly on tax preparation, business taxes, accounting, bookkeeping, kind of anything you can think of. It's under my umbrella.
All the fun stuff with numbers.
Absolutely.
Not everyone thinks it's fun, right? That's why there are people like you.
Yeah, I'm a little sick-minded, I would think, just to like my numbers like I do, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah. And I think I've shared with you before that my daughter is a numbers person too, right?
Mhm.
So she worked in an accounting office for some time and she really liked the investigative fraud part as well. She did audits, but
Okay.
she liked to dig and uncover things, right? And so I definitely understand that too. And that love of numbers. She was just a chicken to go take the test.
It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, honestly. Going through school, doing all that stuff. CPA exam was tough.
It's
Toughest
not
thing.
easy, is it?
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not. The pass rate on some of the exams are less than 50%.
That's what I thought. I
Yeah.
thought at some point she had researched it and then that, she was already had some test anxiety. And then you start reading those numbers and you think, oh, I'm going to fail before I ever get there. So she works at the Palo Village now and she's their treasurer, which it works out perfect for her. But
Yeah.
the partner in the last firm really wanted her to take it. He saw great potential in her, but, guess you do what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Can you please give us a brief description of CSG Tax and Accounting?
Yeah. So again, I focus mainly on income tax preparation. This is definitely the busy time of year for that. Outside of that, I do business consulting. I work with clients to do their sales tax withholdings, their payroll withholdings, kind of anything tax based you can think of. I'm there to consult in terms of bookkeeping and certain classifications, or helping those out there that are interested in starting their business or getting an LLC set up. I assist with all of that as well. So, kind of anything under the tax, or just like my business, tax or accounting realm you could think of, I'm there to help with.
so from big to small, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter what the need is.
Right.
You can typically help someone. And
Yeah.
that's why we asked you to come in today is obviously beginning of the year. It's tax season. We know, gosh, we're down to the wire here, just a couple weeks now before time to I was going to say, I did just see on the news, less and less people are filing their taxes. They're having a real issue with individual filing. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Yeah, it was just 2 nights ago, on the evening news. They were talking about a trend among the younger population just refusing to file. I know, and I know his prep points because we have had a couple of employees here that haven't filed for a couple years. We're like,
Uh-oh.
okay, you're gonna have to file your taxes. But they were saying it's almost a trend with the younger I don't know. I mean, there's 2 things in life we're guaranteed, and only 2. When you are born, you're gonna die, and you're also going to have to pay taxes, right?
Death and taxes.
Death and
Death and
taxes.
taxes.
They're guaranteed in life, right?
And you know what's funny? That's why I have my office right next to a cemetery. You come and get your taxes done with me, and then at some point visit next door.
Visit next door.
I have heard people get extension. I have heard people get extensions. Does that happen?
Yeah,
very
so
often?
you can get extensions a lot of times. Well, all the time. The extension extends when you can file. So the typical deadline is April 15th. So that would extend you 6 months into October 15th. But that doesn't extend the date in which the payment is due. The payment is always due on April 15th. So even if you are going to extend, a lot of times it's good to maybe get an idea of, am I going to owe? And if you are, to send in a payment with your extension. Because if you pay late, there's of course penalties and interest that go along with that. And so now you may owe, and now you may owe a little more. So it doesn't extend everything. It extends your filing. Yeah. The trend, though, I haven't heard that.
I was going to say, Brett, put it on Google, see if you can find anything.
So the thing I would say about that is, if you're working and you're getting a W-2 or a 1099, the IRS knows about it.
Right.
Your employer or whoever you're working with has to file the tax paperwork. So one of two things is going to happen.
There it is. Gen Z has a major tax problem. It was January, the end of January, it was released.
Funny, the Newsweek article had a picture of downtown St. Louis as well.
I know, it did. It did. I noticed that too when he pulled that up.
So if you don't file, again,
59%. Wow. What the heck are they doing? Did their parents just not teach them to be responsible?
I was going to say something like that.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
It is. That's kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, I never even, like, just growing up, you never even thought about it. Your parents were like, hey, get all your stuff together. You got to file your taxes. It is.
Same here.
Yeah. So same thing. Yeah. So that's weird. But it also does, again, I was going to say we have had some of that same generation not filing here for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you're going to have to go see someone. You have to get that straightened out, you know?
I think what I see is a lot of my clients, I end up doing their children's as well.
Right. That's what I remember. I remember my mom taking her stuff. My aunt worked in an accounting office. She always did my mom's taxes. And so, yeah, for years. And then, of course, then I went to school and also did some accounting. And it was like, do this. I can do this right myself. So I did my own for years. Of course, then you start getting businesses and more involved, and then it's just better to pay someone to do it. But especially as the tax laws change and things, right? Which is another reason why we had you come in today, is because obviously there's a lot of things that impact seniors with their taxes, right? So we wanted to bring you in today and just talk a little bit about that, just to educate people or to educate family members who may be helping with their loved one. And so what are some of the things that seniors need to consider when they are looking at doing their taxes?
The biggest thing I always tell all of my clients is make sure you're withholding enough. Your type of income changes after you retire. So, originally you were getting most likely a W-2 income.
Right.
If you're working a job, that company is withholding your taxes each paycheck and sending it into the government.
Sure.
So when you do your taxes, hey, you owe this much, but you've withheld it during the year. After you retire, depending on your income, you might not have any withholdings.
Right.
And so you may have Social Security, you might have retirement or pension. All of those can have withholding. But then you also might have interest, dividends, capital gains, things like those that don't come with withholdings. And so if you're not withholding enough during the year and you have a good year where you maybe bring in more income than you're expecting, or just you bring in income, you're going to owe taxes. And so making sure you withhold enough or possibly pay in quarterly with the estimated taxes is the biggest thing that I try and recommend to the clients. Just make sure you're withholding it.
Absolutely. That way they're not stuck with some big tax bill at the end of the year, right?
Right.
Yeah, which nobody really wants to deal with, right? I mean, those are never fun when you have to write a big check. And I was going to say too, I know we're going to talk about Brady's going to bring up some deductible things too, but when you're talking about income, I mean, obviously, the price of senior care, whether you're living in a facility or you're choosing to do in-home care, a lot of times you're spending more than the income coming in. And so you may then have to get into some of those 401ks or some of those stocks and things that you've kind of put away for a rainy day, right? And so, is I know there's a certain age that people have to start to withdraw some of that, and what is that age?
So you're talking about the required minimum distribution.
Yep.
And so the age for that right now is 73.
Okay.
So you can keep everything in your accounts. Well, you can still keep it in your account when you're 73. You just have to start taking money out of your accounts,
Okay.
which pretty much creates taxable income.
Mhm.
And that's sort of the requirement as to why you have to start taking it. The government knows it's sitting there, and they want
They
something out of it.
Right, they want some
Um,
of their money,
yeah,
especially if
so
it's not been taxed,
exactly.
right? Because
Yep.
the Roth you pay pre-tax, is that correct? But years ago, it was the standard 401k that it was before tax,
Right.
right? So you
Mhm.
didn't pay any of that. And I was gonna say, so I know here, Villa Rose, we're probably one of the most affordable housing. So, you can come here and you can rent an apartment from somewhere from 2,000 to, $3,000 a month, but most places are not as reasonable. And so you could be looking at, 4,500 all the way up to, I mean, I'm thinking about when my dad was in long-term care, we were almost 8,000. And so, we had to kind of plan when we took some of those distributions out, right? So, I mean, I believe when we were caring for my dad, we tried to do it twice a year. So we tried to just pull twice a year out to help pay for his care. We tried to budget what he brought in to pay for that, but then, so do you recommend people try to do that? Not pull out each month, maybe pull out each quarter, a couple of times a year?
Yeah, I would say as often, I guess, as you would need it.
Mm-hmm.
What my recommendation would be is not to pull out too much,
Uh-huh.
because now you're creating too much taxable.
Yep.
If you don't have to pull out everything, or if you can make it on a certain amount,
Right.
depending on with other income that you've got coming in,
Sure.
I just try and keep it as close to what you need
As possible.
as possible. And
Yeah.
again, just so you don't have to create a lot of taxable income,
Right.
extra taxable.
And I was gonna say in home care, I mean, you're looking at somewhere between $30 and $40 an hour when you say Brady is the
Yeah.
the kind of the going market. So I do feel like a lot of people don't realize the big price tag that comes with senior care. I mean, this is why you save for a rainy day, is because you get older and you're gonna probably need some care. And when we all don't get an easy ticket out sometimes, so sometimes it looks differently, right? But I do think it's almost sticker shock to people when they get to this age and then they start looking and they start planning. And it is tax. You can take some of these expenses off on your taxes,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Yep. So if you have things like home care, you can put those towards your medical expenses that you can write off at the end of the year. Any of your prescriptions that you need, that can be written off. Doctor's visits. mileage to doctor's visits, chiropractor, things like that. Those can all go towards your medical deductions for your tax return. And that sometimes it might, just those alone might not add up to being able to itemize. But when you throw other things in there like charitable contributions, or if you own a property, maybe you still have a mortgage and you're paying interest and property tax, all of those added up can sometimes benefit the taxpayer because you'll get more than your standard deduction. And you can start itemizing. And again, that just gets into lowering your tax bill and lowering the amount that you may have to pay.
That totally makes sense.
I think you just answered my next question too.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, probably as you're going to talk about some deductible things.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are there any more items that may be deductible that seniors consider?
Anything that your doctor prescribes. I think the big one is mileage. You're driving to and from the doctor, to and from the dentist, uh, contacts, glasses, eye doctor, anything like that, you can deduct on your taxes.
And I was going to say, what is the standard deduction?
Right now for single, it is $16,550.
So you may have a life. So you may always, I mean, a lot of people just take the standard deduction. I'll raise my hand on that because I'm not going to keep track of probably all that. I'm a healthy person. I don't, so, but I could have a life altering, something could happen, right? To me, life altering. And now all of a sudden, I'm going to St. Louis 2 and 3 times a week. I've got, a lot of medical issues, and people don't, when things like that happen, they don't really think about their taxes, do they?
No, not necessarily. Yeah.
But it really is a good thing to bring up because it could impact your taxes at the end of the year, but you probably don't think about it in the moment. Maybe afterwards, when you meet with a tax professional, they may tell you, but this could help someone just in thinking when something happens life altering, it
Right.
could impact, could be worth tracking some of those things.
Yeah. And if something like that does happen, you've got a lot of out of pocket expenses possibly that might go along with some sort of emergency. And so it's nice to maybe get some relief
Right.
the following year on your tax return.
Right. Because you can claim your medical deductible, correct?
Mhm.
So, I mean, health insurance has changed drastically. I remember when maybe it was like a $250 or $500 deductible, and now you're in the $5,000 deductible range. Well, gosh, $5,000 is almost a third of what your standard deductible is, right?
Yep.
So, you go have some major tests, MRIs, some imaging done, and you're probably out $5,000 pretty quickly for a deductible. And so it does add up. And what about like for seniors, incontinent products? All of those things are also.
Yeah, incontinent products do. When it gets to over the counter type stuff, there's a bit of a gray area, but the incontinent stuff, anything you really need
Mm-hmm.
to have, get through your daily life,
Mm-hmm.
can go on your tax return as a deduction.
And I will say, at some point, my dad was in memory care, and it was quite shocking, is what I'm going to say. Um, so we had him in a memory care, and we had to obviously provide the incontinent products for him. And they wanted us, when we were at home, we used the washable pads that went on the bed, and we'd wash those every day if needed to be, no big deal. Well, when you go into a facility, a lot of times that's not what they want. They want the throwaway because they're not going to want to launder those every day. And, we spent between $300 and $400 a month on his incontinent products. Just, we had them, my sister had done Amazon. We just had them automatically shipped to the facility, every month. But it's kind of amazing, if we wouldn't have seen that number every month come in, we wouldn't have realized we were spending
Right.
that amount of money, right? So just in incontinent products, you start looking at $350 a month. Gosh, you're at 4,000 pretty dang quickly for the year,
Yeah,
right?
with just one thing.
Right.
A lot of another medical expense that some might think about for seniors is through their Social Security. You get your Social Security check, but out of that comes a Medicare deduction to
Right.
pay towards that. That also counts as a medical expense.
So your payment for your insurance. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, they're
So
probably
that,
not
yeah,
thinking it because it comes
those
off ahead of time, right? They don't
those
even
two things right there that we just
right
mentioned, and like you said, you're almost halfway
there.
to your standard deduction.
Right. I do think probably a lot of seniors could probably take advantage of that. They just maybe aren't aware, or
Mhm.
even families probably aren't aware that it's an option for them. Again, as you get older and you need all these tools, they're not cheap. And our senior population just keeps shooting up like
Aging.
crazy.
Right.
I mean, the aging population, and I mean, it is going to be interesting what the demand looks like in the next 10, 15 years as the boomers start to hit. We've never seen these type of seniors before, these numbers in seniors, and it is it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure we have enough facilities to house them. I'm not sure we have enough caregivers and in the communities to care for people.
We don't have
Um,
enough quality facilities. I know that. I mean,
well, I was gonna
fortunately,
say, we struggle just to staff with quality people today. I mean, it's a challenge to find good people and, yeah, I mean, the numbers are I mean, I always say it's the senior tsunami coming, right? I mean, it started last year. The boomers are just starting to hit that age, and it's, yeah, it's gonna be a little wild. I know that's one reason why we've seen a lot of facilities go up and a lot of stuff. People are preparing for it. They've
Okay.
seen the numbers coming. They know it's coming. Um, it's gonna be interesting how we handle it. Um,
They're seeing those numbers in the in the accounting and CPA world. There's more CPAs going out the door than are coming in.
yeah.
So at some point, there might not be enough of me to go around
Mhm.
to help everybody
Mhm.
um, because of that exact point. There's so many CPAs and baby boomer, era that there's more of them leaving than coming in.
Right. It is. I mean, it wasn't very long ago. We were all talking too about just the manual labor jobs that are just, like my son chose to do welding. It's like you can't hardly find trade people anymore. We lost all our trade schools and we're losing all of our plumbers and our electricians and our welders. And it's like we need those people, right? Just
Right.
yeah. So I mean, I was gonna say we just don't really, if you think about in the area, we just don't have a lot of accounting firms. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a couple, instantly I can think there's 2 or 3 big ones, and that's about it. It's, which probably years and years ago, there was probably 12, 13, even a bookkeeping. I used to remember seeing a little, bookkeeping sign, bookkeeping and tax. Those are all kinda gone away. So it is gonna be interesting what we look like in the next 10 or 15 years, right?
I was gonna say, we had a senior luncheon on yesterday, and one of the questions was it was asked on Ask a Pharmacist, and so one of the questions was, if you're happy with your pharmacy, why would you switch to a new pharmacy? So I'm going to ask you, if you're happy with your tax man, you just have to find somebody that you feel like's doing your best. I know when Logan was sick, under a year old, we switched tax men because the one didn't work with us, didn't even, try. And we had all those miles back and forth to Children's and Mercy. And just, so I'm guessing you have to find a good fit.
Yeah, finding someone that's a good fit is definitely important. When I get new clients, I always ask them, How did you find me?" With social media, people can just go out there and say, "Hey, who's a tax person?" And luckily, I have great clients who recommend me. So sometimes, if new clients have had other experiences, um, it's typically an unhappy experience where, like you said, the person's just not working with them. Um, Personally, I try to just take that in and say, okay, well, let's not do that. But yeah, it is important to find someone you trust, someone who's a good fit, someone who you can just talk to and ask questions to, and who's willing to answer questions.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It was interesting when that question got brought up. I said I should have raised my hand because I had switched pharmacist. I said it's probably hard for you to answer that question, but you just said it. You're like, I get a new client because someone referred me. And I said afterwards, I said I would have instantly said it's completely different. I feel like I get personalized service. It's like, when I can go in and get a new prescription and Bruce is like, "Hey, this." I mean, he knows me and he can have a conversation. There's really no difference with a tax guy, right?
Yeah, there really isn't. I do it with my clients now. If they've got children who are getting ready to move out of the house or getting out of that age where they can be on the tax return, I start discussing that with people. And the same with when they're getting ready to retire or work less. Like, okay, well, what are your taxes going to look like? What's your income going to look like next year? Let's try and prepare as much as we can. Sometimes it can be difficult. I'm seeing a lot this year. Well, for tax year 2024, I say this year because I'm still in 2024 in my mind. So for tax year 2024, the stock market was booming, and a lot of people are coming in with a lot of capital gains, higher interest, higher dividends, and it's throwing off their tax planning. They owe a lot, and
Mhm.
the biggest question is, well, I had all these gains, and now I have to pay taxes against them, and it's all with your tax planning. So that's what I try and look into. Again, when people are starting to retire, what's your income gonna look like next, or the coming year? How can we plan so you don't get a big number come tax time?
And you were talking about, the kids coming off your taxes. I mean, I remember a big tax bill, as the kids got old enough to where they're on their own. Now they're no longer a deduction for you. And, if you're not having extra withheld, then you are going to get, if you're used to it, and we were, and then boom, they're gone and no longer full-time students. They're gone, they're done. So goodbye tax deduction.
Right.
And so I do remember that first year, it's like, oh,
Mm.
that's gonna hit. And then going in and adjusting so that you're not getting hit with that. And you were just talking about, I mean, I remember sitting down with a financial advisor not very long ago going, okay, let's focus on no taxable income, like, on the gains, right? So there's some different things they can do to help with that because that's not fun either, right? Getting those big, capital gains, although you want your money to work for that, but it's kind of a little it's a game,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's
Yeah,
a
it
little
really is.
it really is a game.
Mhm.
It is a game. I mean, I'll pay my taxes. I just don't want to pay the government any extra
Right.
if I don't have to. Brady says he will pay extra. I seen you raise your hand. I'll take it. Right, Brady?
Sure.
There we go. We got it on the podcast. I'm going to give him my tax bill. They're probably working on my right by now. So I'll let you know what it is, Brady.
I can't say that after our experience this year because Laura, they told her to claim zero.
Mm.
So she didn't, her previous employer didn't hold any federal. So got a couple thousand.
Oh, if they claim zero, they really should withhold more.
Well, she's
Yeah,
withholding now, though.
I wouldn't have expected that.
They didn't take any
That might
out.
have She may have switched it to exempt instead of zero. So I always try and have my clients, if they can, to claim single on their W-4 and
Mhm.
single, because that's going to withhold as much as possible. Once you start getting into filling it out with dependents and married, that reduces the withholdings,
Mhm.
and rightfully so. With that, there's changes on your tax return,
Sure.
um, but it can still turn into, well, it's still not withholding enough. So I always try and recommend, at least at first, single and zero. If it's too much, we can change it.
Right.
But that's gonna withhold the most.
But there is a rule, and I was gonna say I was trying to think because I had an employee come in and ask about withholding. There is something like if it's like under $300 or $400, they're not gonna take anything federal. I wanna say it's 400.
So it's 400 for like self-employed
Okay.
subcontractor type of things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I do remember there was somebody came in and I was like, and I ended up ADP does our payroll. And so I ended up calling them and they were like, yeah, their gross amount was under such and such. So federally, we don't take anything unless they opt to withhold extra. And their check was just always like, I mean, they were just working just a few, enough hours. They were just always like right at that level. And then at the end of the year, it kind of got them a little bit, but then we had them just fill out a form. Let's take, $15 or
Right.
whatever it was. And then the next year they were like, it's perfect. So sometimes it's just that communication, right? You gotta,
Yeah, absolutely. That's my
Mhm.
biggest goal with my clients. I don't want them to owe anything at the end of the year.
Right.
And sometimes it's a tough discussion,
Sure.
especially when they owe a couple years in a row. It's like, okay, let's do something because we
Right.
can fix this.
Hmm.
And then once they do, that's the greatest conversation.
Right.
I had it just last week. The client I've had for 6, 7 years now. They always owe. They finally changed the withholdings, and this year they got a small refund, which is just great for them.
Right.
Selfishly great for me.
Right. Yeah.
Because those are tough conversations. We all work hard. I don't want to tell someone you owe thousands of dollars.
Right.
And so it can be tough on both sides.
Sure.
Selfishly tough on my side.
Right.
But yeah, being able to see that change just by simply changing your withholdings is a great route.
Right. Made a
And you have
great
a happy
accomplishment.
client.
Yeah, they think I'm a genius.
Communication is, though, I was just gonna just say that again. I think that's where it went wrong with our first tax guy, and I think communication is so important and just trying to help,
Mhm.
uh, give them a little extra attention and help them. That goes a long way.
Yeah, and I mean, I, I don't want to call myself an expert in everything, but that's what I'm trained in. Um, that would be like a doctor or a paramedic not tending to something that they see because I don't have that conversation. It's like, well, if someone's struggling with something, let's talk about it and let me help you kind of get everything settled, get everything where it needs to be. That's what I'm here for. I would hope other accounting professionals and CPAs would feel the same way, but I don't think that kind of goes everywhere around.
I would say that um, most people, even professionally, struggle with tough conversations. I mean, I would say just in working with seniors, I mean, it's a huge thing, and I don't want to say I specialize in them, but I think at this point in my life, I've managed for so long that I specialize in them because I'm one of those people I manage by we're going to talk about it. I'm probably an over communicator. Um, but just as you said, a lot of times, I think through the years, I would see something I would let go, not have a conversation. And then down the road, I end up dealing with a much bigger issue, right? Just like the tax thing. If you have the conversation and you can try to address it when it's small, then you're not going to have this large issue. So, but what I feel like is people tend to really shy away from those things. They don't want to dig into tough conversations or I mean, you're talking about money.
Right.
I mean, money is a tough conversation. It doesn't matter unless you're gonna say, "I'm giving you a bunch of money." I mean,
I'll talk about that all day.
there you go. I mean, in general, it's a tough conversation. I
Mhm.
think Brady can tell you just as me and just talking about people with rent, I mean, when you call here for an inquiry, we're gonna tell you right off the bat what you're looking at, like, no surprises, right? That's not the case in most places. They try to get you in before they even talk about the money, right? So, um, it's tough for people to have those conversations. But the thing that I also notice is it's tough for families to have those conversations. I grew up in a very transparent home. So we talked about anything and everything. Like there was nothing really off the table that we didn't talk about. But that's not the case. I mean, I've been sitting with families and, well, we'll have to go home. I'm not really sure what mom's income looks like. There's been none of those conversations, right? Um, those are tough things. When you're talking about money, it's tough. And I would say, as much as I wish most people had probably your outlook, my outlook, I'm just going to hit it head on because it's the only way to do it. Now you do have to try to be soft and understanding and you can't be brutal about it. But um, most of the time, I find when you get to the end of the conversation, they're glad you had it with them. It really helped them in thinking about some things and planning some things. And, it somebody probably needed to have it with them.
Right.
And, again, I mean, you're talking about money, and money is it's a touchy subject. People are very protective of it, and they don't want people to know, and it's very private, and, not everybody wants to just roll out their checkbook to
Right.
somebody, right?
Right.
I
Yep.
mean,
That's true. And some people, you said they don't know what mom and dad's finances are. In some cases they do know, and they're trying to find an affordable option. That's not easy anymore. So,
and I hope we do these podcasts to try to educate people and families, and I hope that the daughter is having a conversation with the parents, or I hope the son is having a conversation with the parents about uh, what's the options look like and what will you be able to afford, because it's going to impact them one way or another if they're a tight-knit family. The other thing that I hope it does is I hope that it also educates the younger population that senior care is not cheap, it's expensive, and you need to start preparing today, and it's going to determine the type of care that you have. So I think understanding, I mean, Brady and I can tell you that we've been into facilities that only take public aid, or they're a primary public aid facility. And, I wish I could sit here and tell you that the care is as good where, you're paying private pay and it's a wonderful facility and your loved one's going to be taken care of just in the manner. Uh, That's not true. I mean, it's just not true. Um, Unfortunately, this is one where you get what you pay for. And so I'm hoping too that this also makes people aware that, I mean, you have to plan. You do have to plan. We don't know what the journey is going to look like, whether you decide to get long-term care insurance, which is costly, and we don't really see many people our generation be able to afford it. In home care, we saw people farming communities, farmers. Like, I mean, I worked home care years before I did Bill Rose, and um, we seen a lot of people have long-term care insurance because of a tax accountant
Hmm.
that was working with them and said, "Listen, you want to protect the farm ground, right? That's your main asset." So people had to pay, or people had to sell their farm ground to pay for care because you own it, right? You can't
Right.
apply for public aid when you own thousands of acres of farm ground. You're going to have to sell it. And so these, if they had a professional tax accountant helping them build a plan at some point, in the 80s, it was pretty cheap to buy. And at some point, they would be like, listen, I think you should buy a long term care policy. Make sure you protect that farm ground. And so we saw a rash in the 80s of people buying these long term care plans that paid out. I mean, the cost today versus then they didn't know the cost that was going to climb for home care. And so it was really interesting to see those long-term care, because I am so nosy, that when I would sit with them and ask, I would be like, it is kind of rare to see someone have one. And so I'd say, how did you come to purchase this? Now, I also had the guy that sold insurance, that wrote his own dang policy, that paid for 2 caregivers in his home. I mean, it was a beautiful policy with no cap on it. He knew what he was writing. But for the most part, it was farmers. That was hands down what we seen. And 95% of them would be like, well, my tax accountant told me, like, let's protect your farm ground. And they were all big about passing that farming ground on to their children, right?
Right.
About passing that business on. So they were always, they were like, this is probably one of the biggest expenses that we see people get caught up in, because most of them don't have a ton of money sitting in the bank. All of their asset is in their ground and their equipment, right? So they don't have the money that they can just pay for it. But when you look on paper, they're worth something, right? So they're never going to be eligible for Medicaid. And so it is, there, that's another option for people to look at. Sometimes it's a gamble. Sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't,
Right.
right? But if you're somebody that has some assets that you don't really want to have to sell off someday, it's probably an option, unless you got a buttload of money sitting somewhere offshore in a offshore's account. Brady.
Not me.
Uh, I was going to say, Shea, tell us, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Is there anything else you're passionate about?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about fraud. I think that's kind of what brought me into the numbers world. I was going through my undergraduate program, and it was account. Like, wow, how exciting, right? But then I found this program, a master's degree in forensic accounting. I'm like, wow, what's this? Let me explore this a little bit, which is pretty much the study of fraud. And so I went through with that, and became a certified fraud examiner as well. Um, and so each year I have to have a certain amount of continuing education hours to keep my certifications up. And so I go to a lot of conferences. And the big thing they're talking about conferences right now, is elder fraud, elder scams. The big one right now is called pig butchering, which is an interesting term.
Right.
But the whole point of it is to fatten up your prey, pretty much. Um, with technology, AI, and everything getting so great these days, there's a lot of text messages and phone calls and emails going out to anybody. I just got a text message the other day that my Easy Pass had expired, or I missed paying a toll or something like that, and to go to a website to pay. Well, that website wasn't. Well, it's not real.
Right.
I didn't click on it.
Right.
I know these things, but some of our elder folks might say, "Whoa, I need to pay this. I need to do this right now." They might go on and provide bank information, credit card information, sensitive. The other type of scam is wrong number texts. Even more sensitive information of social security numbers, things like that, to where now you've got scammers on the other side who have all this information. Text messages. Well, I'm
Correct.
sorry. Do you still want to come over for dinner, or what have you? The conversation might continue, and then it might turn to something like investments. Do you invest in anything? Um, and these fraudsters are setting up apps, investment quote unquote apps that they might send to somebody and have you invest. And they might even send some money back to you to
Right. To
hook you
make you
in.
prove to you, oh,
Right.
this is a good deal.
Yeah. They're fattening you up.
Mm-hmm.
And so before you know it, you might get some money back and you might invest again and get some money back. And then they might pull you for a big number. Hey, what if you put in $150,000? Well, then you go to invest that knowing, well, yeah, I've gotten all my money back every time. And then the app disappears, the text messages disappear, everything's gone.
Goodbye.
That'd make you sick.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to tell on myself. I'm going to tell on myself just so people understand how they get you. So, was it last week, Brett? 2 weeks ago. All right, 2 weeks ago. First of all, my first question before I get into the story is, have you ever been used in a criminal case?
I have not.
Oh, dang, I'm a true crime buff. So I'm hoping somebody's going to find you to come go through something. It's going to be like a true crime. I could totally see that occurring with you with this forensic thing. So I'm a big
That's what I'm trained to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm a big true crime buff. I'm watching Karen Reed, Body in the Snow, on ID like a couple weeks ago. I'm like focused in. My phone goes off. It's like 10 till 9. And it's a New York number. And most of the time I don't swipe to answer those, but I did. And the guy says, "Hi, this is such and such with Coinbase." So yes, I have a Coinbase and I have a little bit of crypto. And he says, "Is this, Cindy Cannon?" Yes. "Well, your account has been flagged for a possible fraud. And so I'm calling just to see." And he starts asking me some questions. And I start answering those questions. And it was like, "Do you still have access to your account?" I open my app. Yeah. Okay, well, someone in Belize, I don't know, he gave me some country, has tried to access your account in the last 10 hours. And we just want to make sure, blah, blah, blah. Well, nope, that's not me. Okay. What type of device do you use? And I tell him. And then he asks the question, "Well, what's your current balance in your account?" And again, I'm watching the Karen Reed Body in the Snow. I'm really focused on that.
You were preoccupied.
I was. And I was like, "Sir, if you are with Coinbase, you know what's in my account." "No, actually, because I'm with the fraud department, I do not have access to that." I said, "Well, I'm not going to tell you that information." And so then I start asking him questions. And now guess what happens? Click. Yep. So I had gotten, interestingly, my journal was there and I had wrote down and I did send. So then I go on to Coinbase and I change my password. And then I actually get into Coinbase where there is a statement through the fraud department that says, "What? Are you going to speak now?" No. Coinbase will never call you. Under no circumstances do we reach out to you. But guess what? I don't know that I told you, Brett, that that number tried to call me back last week. Because they got me. So they thought maybe I can try to call back and see if I can hook her again.
Right.
So I came in the next day and I'm like, I am so bad. I mean, really the only information I gave them, they already knew my name and they already knew my email address because I told the guy, I was like, "Well, send me an email that gives me all of your information." I think he left out a dot when he said it to me. So I think he did. I'm not sure he had it perfect, but I wasn't going to correct him because I thought, well, if he knows it, he's going to have it, right? But that it is that easy to get pulled in. It is that easy. I mean, I consider myself a pretty smart, savvy person, and they had me. They did have me for a few minutes when he asked for the account balance. Then I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. You already know that. Why are you asking me that? right? I mean, this went from someone's trying to access your account and making sure I'm trying to protect your account to what is your balance in your account, which did flag me like, whoa, wait a minute. And then I even said, well, I guess I should probably go change my password. He was like, oh, no, that's not necessary. And I was like, well, that's the first thing they tell you to do.
Yeah, a lot of
is
red flags everywhere.
Right. So yeah, I get his name. I asked, I guess I got the click on, I'm going to need your employee ID. And he's like, oh, we don't have them. And I was like, oh, come on now. You've got something that identifies who you are within Coinbase. And then click. Anyway, so it's easy, right? It is easy. You're preoccupied. Again, I was preoccupied. I was looking forward to the series. I've been following the Karen Reed case for some time now. And so anyway, so I was preoccupied. Yes, I have a Coinbase account. It just, I didn't even think about it really until he asked the one question. And then I was like, that's not right. He shouldn't be asking me my personal information, right? He shouldn't be asking. So it's pretty easy. I think with seniors, they try to become friends with them, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And so, you mentioned that Coinbase won't call you. The same goes for the IRS. They will not call you and they will not email you. So if you ever get a call or an email from the IRS, don't give them information.
Hang up. It's not them.
They'll send you a letter. But you mentioned the phone call. Things are just technology is great these days. So, someone may have taken your voice and now turns it into AI and turns around and calls a loved one. It's really important to just have some. You were talking about having family discussions. That's an important family discussion. Like, hey, these things are happening. These things are real. We need to have sort of a safe word. If you get a phone call from a loved one frantically, it might, you need to have safe words. You need to have people you can talk to. Because if you had given the information, you might be embarrassed by that. Like, oh my gosh, I just got taken. And you might not want to tell anybody about that, but it's important to talk about those things.
I was going to say, I came to work the next day and I told on myself at stand up. Did I not? Do you remember that? I'm like, I am so ashamed of myself. I did it. They're all laughing at me. I was like, I didn't, but I just because it's so easy, I just felt like it was really, they kind of got me really easy. And it's pretty easy to fall prey to that. I know my mom had a lady calling her and it was just a friendly conversation. Just, how are you doing today, Margie? And my mom was like, she really is interested and cares about me. And I was like, oh, mother. Anyway, and so we actually came up with a statement that she had right there by her phone. And it was, I'm sorry, my daughter makes all of my decisions regarding my healthcare and my financial documents. And so we made that for my mom because my mom had traditional Medicare, which I wanted them to keep traditional Medicare. And we paid for a supplemental plan. Again, they could afford that path. It's not for everyone. But traditional Medicare is great. Pays for everything. It's 80%. We know what's going to cover, most tests you can get. There's not a big runaround. Well, these Advantage plans came out and the amount of calls that they got, and Brady can tell you, we see seniors all the time getting scammed in this process where they call them and they switch them from a traditional Medicare plan to an Advantage plan because they tell them it's going to be cheaper. And it sometimes is, but then when you go to use a benefit, the benefits are like nothing. Like you get rehab for 2 weeks versus what is traditional?
To 100 days.
Up to 100 days in rehab. Well, that's when you really need it, is when you're in rehab, when a copay for a doctor's appointment is 20% versus $20, like pay the 20% because when you need it, it's not going to be there. And so the amount of calls, she was tallying them for me. And we are looking at like 10 and 15 calls a week, trying to get them to switch to an Advantage plan. And again, I was in the healthcare industry. And so, my mom would be like, do you think we should look? I'm like, no, we're not going to switch. Like, so we just made that statement. And then she would be like, I'm not making any decisions. That's my daughter. My daughter works in the industry. She knows what she's doing. And then they kind of tapered off. But there was one rep that tried to build a relationship. What a lot of people don't know is that obviously the government is all about people taking advantage plans because they're basically subcontracting that out, right? Um, every rep that gets someone switched is like $450 in their pockets. There's a $450 instant payout, right? So the rep on the phone is just trying to they're just trying to make their dollar, right?
Follow the money.
Correct. Follow the money. Exactly. And the government is saving money because their contracted amount is going to be a whole lot less than what traditional Medicare is going to pay out. So it benefits. I mean, so I do understand why they're paying somebody $450 because it's big savings to them, right? But keep the seniors on the other end don't connect all those dots. They don't know all those things, right? And I am telling you, Carrie, our wellness coordinator, I cannot tell you how many conversations we've had with families here where the daughter has no idea that mom has switched from traditional Medicare to an Advantage plan because she got a phone call. And now she's fallen with a broken hip, and they're only going to pay for her to be in rehab for 14 days. And the daughter is beside herself. And there's nothing, you can only switch it back once a year.
And you can't rehab a fractured hip in 14 days.
And I just cannot tell you how many times, and even though it's not a money scam, it kind of is a money scam, and it kind of ties into, it's where they really just need to get, and I know it's tough, they just need to get someone involved with them. Brady and I, at almost every lunch and learn or every educational event, we say is find an advocate within your family, somebody that can help you with some of those tough things, money and health care. And, those are important things that are going to dictate a lot about your care. And if you don't have someone else involved, it's okay to say, let me have my daughter take a look at it, or let me have my son take a look. I don't care if it's a church friend, have someone else take a look at it because sometimes you miss things.
Just getting a perspective from the outside world. I think we might have talked about this off the air. Just another example of fraudulent calls and having someone to talk to. One of the stories I heard at one of my last conferences was, someone was scammed with an AI call over the phone, and they wanted payout by gift cards. And so the person went to Walgreens or wherever they went and bought 100 something gift cards. And it was the cashier that said, "Ma'am, you just bought 100 gift cards. Is everything okay?" And that was the triggering point. Like, "Oh, what? I don't think so. I, I think something's going on here." But it just took someone from the outside. She may not have had anyone to talk to
Yeah.
in her circle or whatever. And so it just takes a little outside perspective to kind of help put everything into
And
perspective.
what a great example for the clerk to say, "Ma'am, is everything okay?"
Yeah.
Because not everybody would say that, right?
Right.
I mean, some people just checking people out and they never make eye contact with you. And so, yeah, good for the clerk to say that, which then just clicked in her mind like, well, this is not right. It is amazing. I was going to say, I wish the scammers would maybe put as much effort into a job as into scamming. They
Any
might really
any
use a
conference or anything I go to, it's always, this is what they would do. Here's
Mhm.
how we've combated that, and here's what they've started to do to get around that. It's always, what's their next step? We're a little bit behind because they've transitioned to
Mhm.
continue to beat us or law enforcement.
Right. At which, I mean, yeah, it's amazing the amount of energy that they put into trying to steal something from someone instead of just, and they're obviously they're super smart people. It's like they could definitely use that for good in some way, you know? Um,
And the family not knowing is we've both seen it over the years a
so
lot, and
many
I saw it when I was in
times.
rehab, memory care. You just can't believe, I mean, they were shocked. They had no idea that their mom was lonely one day and signed up for a new, Advantage plan, and then everything changes after that, especially having a chance of going in for rehab or needing rehab.
And again, there are times, where, financially it makes sense to have an Advantage plan. I mean, there are times, I mean, if Medicare, traditional Medicare is a little more expensive and you may be on a limited budget and, there are times when it does, uh, it has to be the plan, and that's different. But, um, when your family is sitting there shell shocked that they had no idea. And then, of course, their question to us is, how do I get out of this? Well, once a year, in like September to October, I mean, there's a very small window period there where you can enroll back into just traditional Medicare and you're stuck with it until that point. And it has been a real challenge. Again, families are trying to understand the repercussions and it's too late and they're now trying to care for their loved one and they're kind of at a loss. I mean, I wish uh I always say I wish people knew ahead of time what was going on. They could help prevent it. But this is where those conversations come in as we've talked about having some tough difficult conversations. This is also where seniors need to realize they need help when it comes to these kind of decisions. Because I think most of the seniors we talk to, they'd be like, well, I can make that decision myself. I mean, I remember I very independent parents. I mean, I remember my mom saying, I can make decisions for myself. I'm a grown adult. Don't tell me what to do, kind of thing. But my mom got an eye opener with finances when my dad retired from farming, but then always had a cow and calf operation and always did hay. And then, when he was 80, he had some health issues and it was time to give that up. And there was a local guy that was like, well, I'll come in and buy all your cattle. And so he came and looked at the cattle, threw my dad a number. My dad liked him, nice guy in the community. My dad took it. And so me and my sister happened to be over at the house like the next day or so. And my mom and dad said, and I was like, he paid you how much for how many head of cattle? And so I'm just looking at the market, right? I'm just doing a little math. Like, I don't think that's right. And my mom's like, what? Like, Dad, when's the last time you listened to the market prices? I remember as a kid, my dad come in at noon, he'd hit the market radio. He'd listen to the prices. So then I start doing the math. My mom and dad both. And I'll never forget my mom saying, Carl, it's time we no longer handle our business because we missed that. We left some money on the table there. Interesting thing is, didn't know how many head of cattle he had because my son had been feeding them. We'd been counting the head of cattle. So we knew there were 15 more cows out in the pasture that hadn't come in that day. So we almost got the same amount of money sending 15 cows off to the market as we did for 50 head of cattle. But again, it opened their eyes and they realized that we can't make those decisions. That sounded like a good number because it was a good number 15 years ago.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a good number 15 years ago, but we're 15 years down the road. And have you looked at the price of beef? I mean, I think that day when I said to Dad, when's the last time you listened to the market? It's like, oh, I haven't listened to the market in a while. Okay. Now I know. I mean, uh, he grew up very dirt poor, didn't really have much of an education, but he could do money. I mean, he was a self-made man. I mean, he started his own garbage business and he was a very, very successful man. And if there was one thing he knew, was how to make a buck. And he would he'd scrape for it. Let me just tell you. And so he could do the math for sure. And so I remember him going to get his dementia test, and the girl starts asking him questions. And I said, whoa, 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 like math question. I said, do it in dollars. And she said, okay, if I give you $100 and I take away 30, 70. I mean, he, like he got it,
It clicked.
Yeah, it clicked because do it in dollars because he's thinking money. But anyway, sometimes it takes something like that, right? I mean, and that was it. From then on, they're like, yeah, we'll let them. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you never want to let it get down to, now we can't go back.
correct.
Like we've always said, it again, full circle back to the withholdings, just
Right.
preparing, making sure everything's taken care of, you have the right people to talk to,
Absolutely.
be prepared.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks, Shea, so much for coming in today. It's been a great conversation, a great topic. Why don't we'll just wrap this up. Tell people how they can connect with you. And if somebody, I think we're going to talk to some of the residents here about maybe if you need some tax help. But how can people connect with you and your organization?
Yeah, you can find me online. I have a website. It's www.csgtaxandaccounting.com. Or you can find me on Facebook. Same thing, CSG Tax and Accounting. Any more of my contact information, email, phone number, any of that will be out there. But yeah, just feel free to visit my website or my Facebook page and get in contact with me. On my website, I've got space for booking phone consultations and meetings in person or again on the phone or Zoom. So check it out and get hold of me any way you can.
Perfect. We really appreciate you coming in and
Thank you.
talking.
Yeah, you're
And
welcome.
we do. We definitely appreciate you taking the time. For those that don't know, this was take 2 because we missed our audio card wasn't working quite. So we do really appreciate, especially during tax time, for coming in. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
And thanks everyone for listening. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Senior Moment podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to like, follow, and share wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We hope you'll join us next time. Take care, everybody.